Hey, you guys. Before I finish the few things I have to do tonight, I wanted to just come on because I was responding to your comments on the live I did with Sin and Nyla, and there were just a few comments that I wanted to kind of just address publicly. And let's see if we can kind of go over them together, okay? So, Ola said, Black men are building, just not the ones you want. All my friends are engineers, and they tell me all the time that Black women don't look their way. And my response to Ola, what's up, Ola, was that everything is not about sex, right? Everything is not about who you're dating. That's my first thing, right? When I talk about building, I'm not talking about having, being a robotics engineer or being a farmer, because that was Ola's next point. Ola, I don't know if Ola is male or female, but Ola's next point was construction, farming, being able to fix the car you drive, the knowledge to produce the things that are needed. In Ola's mind is the idea of building. Now, that's not building. And that's kind of what I was trying to say in the live earlier. I was trying to say in the live earlier that we convolute. If you're an engineer, let's say you're a robotics engineer, you have knowledge, but if you're a robotics engineer that, say, works for Ford Motor Company or Kellogg's, you're not building. You're just a man with a job, right? Building would be, I'm an engineer and I get together with a man that has acquired water rights and land rights to a certain location. And then let's say I'm a structural engineer. I then build a bridge so that commerce can happen and we can move water from one place to another, or I engineer the piping systems, right, for a Black community. Or, I am a chemical engineer, right? Or let's say I'm a robotics engineer and I start building the robots that are needed so that Black people can open up factories. Do you know that most of the robots that we use in factories are built in Japan? So somebody being an engineer, that's not them building, right? If that engineer isn't, let's say, building a robot that will help us develop our own vehicles, building the sort of robots that allow us to develop canning machines so that we don't have to can by hand. If that person is an engineer and their specialty is building infrastructure, if they're not building water lines and pipelines and gas lines, internet infrastructure so that we can have independent infrastructure, that's not building. And that's why I said, sometimes I feel like, when Nyla and Sin are present, people take leave of their senses and they stop listening. And that's why I really wanted to come back and just touch on some of these comments that people were making. This is why I say that we think from a peonic standpoint. This is most dangerous in our men because our men are the ones that have to compete on a global scale. As a woman, I don't have to compete on a global scale, right? But as men, the world is run by men, you have to think bigger. then I have friends who are engineers and women won't date them, right? It's not about what women will date you. It's not about you being an engineer. What are you engineering? What are you building? Do you understand the difference between getting a good engineering job and manufacturing things that allow you to, I don't know, develop weapons, right? There are machines that robotics engineers build that allow them to compile weaponry. So somebody having a white collar job or a blue collar job, because a lot of engineers are blue collar, and women passing them up is irrelevant. My channel is not the dating channel. I don't care what women passed you up or what men passed you. It doesn't matter to me. This conversation is bigger than who wants to get in bed with you or reproduce with you. And we need to start thinking bigger and better as Black people. We think like servants. We don't think like leaders. Because our people have been in servitude so long, all of our aspirations and our ideations are about petty things. We think about acquiring money. We don't think about creating money. Do you see the difference? We think about acquiring money. We don't think about creating money. We think about buying a BMW. We don't think about creating factories that churn out competition for BMW. Do you see the problem? Do you see where the frustration comes from? Because we're having two different conversations. Some of you are on one wavelength, and I'm talking about something totally different. And then you come to my comment section and you make these comments, and I appreciate you taking the time to comment. But your mind is not, we're not vibing. Your mindset and my mindset are very different. And that's why we're having a communication breakdown. And that's why intelligent Black men and women are frustrated with you guys. We're frustrated with the majority. We're frustrated because we're not having the same conversation. Right? You want to talk about somebody knowing how to farm. I want to talk about acquisition of land that we put farms on and then distribute goods to various nations so that we can create currency, so that we're capable of self-sustaining communities with food, not the ability to grow plants. You say engineer, I'm asking where are the people building new pipelines to move water. You say buy a house, I'm asking where are the people that are getting control over coal mines, over mines where we can harvest some of the metals that we need to create the microchips that we need to build the machines that we need. You say construction worker, I'm wondering when we're going to build these factories. Who has the knowledge to build the factories? Who has the knowledge and ability and the willingness to go in there and build these things so that we don't have to go buy anything? We can manufacture. So for this particular comment, and I'm going to move on to another one, Ola, I just think you don't comprehend what I'm saying. When you say something like, you have friends that are engineers and no women are looking their way, I'm saying I don't actually care. My conversation's not about your friends who are engineers that women don't like. This conversation is beyond that. I don't care if they never reproduced with another person, if they actually engineered something we needed. As a community, Can they go fabricate us the machinery we need and acquire the mines we need to build weaponry? Can they do something that is useful? That is what building is. Building is not getting a good job and buying a Porsche. Building is not moving into a nice neighborhood. Building is not getting the girl. That's not building. I don't know why I should have to point that out, but I do have a whole video where I do like a whole slide because I did a presentation at a Pan-African convention and I came on YouTube and I represented my presentation that I did at that convention here on YouTube. Go back in my video archives. I map out what it means to build. I map out the exact type of infrastructure, but as a woman, I don't want to be in a position to do that. It does not make me feel good to have to go to a comment section and address a comment like that. That's frustrating. That's discouraging. Okay. Let's go to a different comment, okay? Let's go to a different comment. There's just a few comments here, not all the comments, but there were a few here that I really thought were worth addressing, okay? Another man named Kenneth came and started talking about dating. I just don't know what dating has to do. I'm so confused. I don't understand. Why do people, please don't come to my channel when I try to have a serious conversation and talk about who wants to date who. I don't care. I don't care who anybody's dating. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you how little I care who anybody's dating. Do you know that white men have created more mixed children than anybody? They've managed to replace whole entire continents of people with their mixed children. Look at all of South America. Look at all of Mexico. Entire continents where they created mixed children to the point that there are literally like 1 or 2% of a native population left. And everybody else is practically literally bred completely white with a smattering of native blood and a splatter of black blood here and there. Even when we talk about dating, because this person went on a whole rant about, Black women dating out and all this stuff. Even when we talk about dating, right? Let's say Black men date out more than Black women. Okay, whatever. They marry out more than Black women. Okay, whatever. The difference between white men dating out and Black men dating out is white men did it to annihilate other populations. They dated out and then they encouraged their mixed children to marry and reproduce white until you had entire continents, entire countries of people who effectually were just white. And then those mixed people were used to suppress, or these spicy whites, as Sin likes to call them, these white people with, a 5% admixture after all the breeding out has been done, are used to suppress the small numbers of native populations that are left. When we think about somebody from Argentina, do you know that the original people of Argentina look like nothing like the people that were once in Argentina? They look white now. When we think about a Mexican, the Mexicans now look nothing like the original population. They are bred very white. There are many places in Asia where the people that live there now are bred practically white. They look nothing like the original populations. Even if I were to indulge these conversations about sex and who people are dating, I wouldn't do it on a remedial level about, if it was a Pookie or a Ray Ray or an educated lame. That's stupid. Even if I wanted to indulge the interracial dating conversation, if I wanted to make my channel about sex and who wants to date who, my only conversation would be that it would be stupid to do it out of self-hate because the competition does it to annihilate. And when you hate yourself, you go out and you make a mixed kid, and then your mixed kid goes out and they breed out as well. And then you erase yourself. We can't even get interracial reproduction correct. White people have interracial reproduction down. When white people make babies, their babies go and date other white people. When we make babies, we teach our babies to hate Black people so that they don't create more Black people. We don't stop the bloodline. We'll never be in danger of annihilating a whole continent full of people the way white people have managed to do, because all of our conversations are remedial. We dislike each other too much to even see strategy. We really think dating and reproduction is about just having sex and liking people. We think it's just that simple. I don't watch TV, but yesterday I had the opportunity to watch like live television, and I was looking at all the commercials and things. And I was so impressed. I literally am probably going to do a whole live about this, like for my patrons and my members. I was so impressed with how in the commercials, almost every Black person I saw was either in an interracial relationship or they were homosexual. On all the commercials, is the most amazing thing I ever saw. They were either in an interracial relationship or homosexual on all of the commercials. I was like, wow, this is what TV is like. Do you know that white people are diabolical? This is amazing. After they went continent to continent and they enslaved and bred out, when they went to Africa, in some parts of Africa, when they created mixed children, they would send the mixed children to live in Europe. They would take the mixed children away from their mothers and they would send them to live in Europe. In South America, they called it bettering the race. White men would create mixed children, and then they would encourage the mixed children to marry and reproduce white because it was a way to better their race. It was a way to better their genetics. In Australia, they took the mixed children and they gave them to white families, and they encouraged the mixed children to marry other white people. And now in 2021, white people control the media, and in the media, they tell you to breed yourself out and to be homosexual. See, when we have conversations about interracial dating, we're talking about how we don't like Black men, we don't like Black women, Black people are trash. When whites, who will control our lives, which is why we are going to talk about them, talk about interracial dating, it's to create a class of people who will choose white to erase the very people that they procreate with. But we are too stupid to have that level of a conversation, aren't we? We're too busy fighting each other and thinking this is about who didn't like me in high school, what Black women passed me up, what Black men are trash. We think on that level, whereas they're out here annihilating whole populations of people, just whole countries, whole continents of people just disappearing, whole tribes of people non-existent. Millions upon millions of people look nothing like their ancestors anymore because they have it down to a science. And we're over here bickering over whether somebody got a white boyfriend. I can't. I can't. I can't with it's frustrating. Right? It's very frustrating to me because when we engage in these conversations, it's not even for anything that matters. We do it on the pettiest, most menial, most ridiculous of levels. And it's really frustrating. Let me go to a different comment. I want to go to a different comment now. I was just going through these comments and I was just like, oh my gosh, like, honestly, it hurt my heart. It really hurt my heart. These conversations. I was just like, what in the world? Right? What in the world is happening with us? Somebody else said, Paul said, to address this Pookie and educated lame divide, you guys act like our Pookies are violent chickens with their heads cut off. They are/were not stupid. Educated lames should not have to explain to them who to shoot in the street. So this Paul was making this argument with regard to, I think when Nyla was talking about, we despise and we fear the Pookie and the Ray Ray because we don't know how to use them, right? And Paul's argument was nobody should have to tell them who they should shoot in the street. And I think sometimes we get so caught up in arguing with each other that we start to sound stupid, right? Here's the thing. Let's use America as an example. We have a commander-in-chief, right? We have a commander-in-chief. The commander-in-chief in America does not go to war. Many of the generals never see a battlefield once they reach that position. We don't tell our army, which is the largest branch of the military, we don't tell the army to just figure out who they need to shoot, do we? They go through training. We train them. We teach them. We don't just let anybody join the army and go, hey, well, common sense tells you not to shoot Americans. They go through a rigorous training process that is designed to break their minds, which is why I side-eye any revolution, including ex-military. No offense to the ex-military. I respect you guys, but I can't think of one revolutionary movement that was not infiltrated because ex-military were involved. All the ones I can think of, that was a problem, but that's beside the point. My point is that, no, it's not intuitive for somebody who grew up in the streets to know not to shoot another Black person. Clearly, our community, something that we don't do intuitively is respect each other. We don't do that intuitively. In fact, we do the exact opposite. We disrespect each other intuitively. Nobody would expect what would essentially be your soldiers to simply figure out their own strategy. There's leadership involved there. I'm not for violence within the community. I don't condone selling drugs within the community, any of these things. But I think it would behoove us to act like there's no guidance that's needed, or for us to overlook what's being said, which is that the educated lame and the so-called Pookie and Ray Ray don't have a beef if they learn where each of them fits into the bigger picture of our liberation and progress. I just don't know how much more clear I can be about that. And when I tried to explain this to this brother about the organization of human capital, he said, according to our women, we have none. First of all, I'm a woman and you're talking to me, and I'm the one that said organizing our human capital. So you can't say, according to our women, we don't have human capital when we literally just had a whole live stream about organizing human capital, making the most of our human capital. The frustration of not being able to communicate with individuals who don't understand even what the words human capital means. So that's when, to me, you're just being argumentative. If I'm saying to you, and I just sat and I talked to two other women about the organization of human capital, and this is inclusive of our men, then where do you then come out in the conversation to say that according to our women, we don't have human capital? When you breathe because a Black woman gave birth to you, clearly Black women understand the prospect and understanding of what human capital is in our community. We push them out through our vaginas. Surely we understand that. I'm not saying every Black woman is a saint, because goodness knows we're not all saints. I'm not saying every mother is good, because we know a trash mother has ruined many a life. I'm just saying that you don't carry something around in your belly for 9 months and push it out your vagina without recognizing that that individual can be a resource. So when there's nothing to argue about, why do we argue amongst ourselves? If I am talking about the organization of human capital and you recognize that that is beneficial, then where is our beef? Other than to be confrontational for no reason. And these unnecessary confrontations are why our people cannot move forward. I hear you. But this is what I would say, Tyrant Spain. I would say that there's a whole lot of things. So, for example, I picked on military, but I would even say this for people who date and reproduce outside of our community. You guys know that I have mixed children, right? There are some places in the revolution I and my children do not belong. Because let's say if you're married to a white man or a white woman, there are some things you never need to know about the movements at the top levels of a revolution. Because when you go home and you lay in bed with somebody who is white, there is the risk of infiltration. And even if you personally feel like you can be trusted 1,000%, you can't guarantee that every person laying in bed with a white person can be trusted 1,000%. And therefore, all of you need to be excluded. So, Tyrant Spain, when I talk about ex-military, I feel the same way. Maybe you can be trusted as an ex-military person, but what is bigger, our personal pride or creating a rule that applies to everybody so that nobody slips through the crack? Our people have been infiltrated too much. Sometimes we have to put our personal pride aside, or our knowledge that we would not be a weak point aside, to say that I can't guarantee, because I wouldn't create a problem, that somebody with my same life experience might not create a problem. Maybe one person who was in the military would not be an infiltrator, but maybe 5 other people would. So then we have to exclude everybody. And that's not a comfortable thing, but sometimes we have to move in ways that are beneficial to the collective, right? And so I would hope that our ex-military can understand that point just as me, somebody who has mixed children, or a mixed person who is loyal to Black people, will understand that your position is not going to be the equivalent of some other people's position because of that compromise in your life. This doesn't mean that we are not loved. This does not mean we're not part of the community, but it does mean that we've watched many of our revolutions get screwed up behind these kind of shenanigans. So we have to keep it real across the board. right? We have to keep it real across the board. For the safety of everybody, sometimes we just have to step to the side, right? Let me get to a couple more of these comments. I'm not going to go through every single one of them, but there was one in here, and this one is the one that made me go live, you guys. This particular comment was the one that made me go live. I read this comment, and I was like, I'm about to go live because you guys were playing around in my comment section. You guys were doing too much. Okay. So somebody commented, when Asians are attacked, they write laws like Stop Asian Hate, etc. Why aren't Asian women online calling their men weak and conquered, I wonder? Let me read that again, because I couldn't even believe, literally I responded, is that a real question? That can't be a real question. When Asians are attacked, they write laws like Stop Asian Hate, etc. Why aren't Asian women online calling their men weak and conquered, I wonder? Right? That comment had me on the floor. But I'm going to answer it in this live. Maybe they aren't online calling their men weak and conquered because almost every factory in the world that makes textiles has to get their machinery from Japan. Listen to what I'm saying. You can practically not create a t-shirt or a pair of pants without going to the Japanese for the machines that create textiles. Okay? A significant portion of our grains globally come out of Asia. There are countless countries whose food supply would be greatly affected if Asians stopped selling grains. When you call to get customer service from any of the many companies that you deal with that are not local, somewhere around 60% of your customer service calls actually go to Asia. That's why a lot of the operators, their English is really good, but you can tell that they're not native speakers. Sometimes you have to spell stuff out for them. They can't quite get it right because English is not their first language. What is my point in this? The reason Asian women aren't online complaining about their men being conquered is because all Asians clearly have not been conquered. Now, I will say they are in an uncomfortable treaty with the Western world, but we're not over there just blowing up Kim Jong-un, are we? Kim Jong gets to live because Asians are not conquered. He's over there shooting missiles and doing all kinds of fun stuff, and we're not over there really trying to flex with him. For all the smack talking we do about China, I don't see any American troops trying to march on China. But I'm positive that we watched a young boy named Ahmaud Arbery literally get hunted down in the street like a dog. And the Black military did not flinch. So I'm guessing the Chinese women aren't online calling their men conquered because their men have a standing army, a standing military that will go to war. I'm guessing the Koreans aren't calling their men conquered because their leader is out there shooting missiles and playing with nuclear weapons, ready to go to war. I'm guessing the Japanese aren't online, the Japanese women aren't online calling their men conquered, because you can't even get a t-shirt without coming through them. Right? So we're not going to compare apples to raisins or apples to rocks, right? Jamie Blue said, in the US, they just stayed out. They are less loyal than Black women. I mean, Eurasia is one big continent. It's called Eurasia. I have a video in my archives. It might be on my power playlist. Asians are white people. And I provide evidence of this. Eurasia is just one big old continent. The line in the Caucasus Mountains is arbitrarily drawn because they don't like each other. It's an arbitrary line. There's just an imaginary line that separates Europe and Asia. But Eurasia is one big continent. They have one continental plate. They have one big continental plate. They don't even have separate continental plates. It's just one big continent, right? Well, not all Asians are white people. No, but some are. Yes, not all of them. We know if, come on now, come on. This is what I mean. Why do you guys act like are you being intentionally obtuse? We know all Asians aren't white people. Do you know there's a human safari of Black people in Asia? They're Asian, but they're Black and they're part of a human safari. So we know all Asians are not white, don't we? Don't we? We know that there are Black-skinned Asians in India that have their arms and legs cut off and can't even walk into certain restaurants without taking their shoes off and cannot use the same cups as the white-skinned people. So we know all Asians aren't white. I do not like when you guys play stupid. I don't know if you're playing dumb. I don't know if you're really dumb. I don't know. I'm trying to understand. Clearly, we know all Asians aren't white people. We know this because we see dark-skinned and Black-skinned Asians get oppressed. So we know that they're not all white. Or maybe some of us don't know any better. I mean, there's a whole safari of Black people in Asia. So clearly they're not all white. I mean, why even open up your mouth to say something dumb? Earlier in this conversation, I said many of the Asian populations don't even look like the natives anymore because they've been bred out. I said that earlier in this live. Why even speak? Like sometimes, y'all, I promise, I don't even mean to be. It's just like, why even comment? Why do it? Why be confrontational unnecessarily? At least if you're going to be confrontational, be intelligent with your confrontation. Don't just be nasty to be nasty. Don't just be a smart ass to be a smart ass. Like, have something behind it. Have some substance behind your comments. You know what I mean? Make a comment that really makes us think. Disagree, but makes some freaking sense at the same time. You know, it's okay to disagree. But when you disagree, can you disagree and actually make any kind of level of sense? Can you not just disagree to be contrary and nasty, but can you disagree in a way that contributes to the conversation rather than stagnates it and makes me make me have to reiterate something or say something that all of us thinking people already know to be the case? I don't know what to say. I can't do it. Thank you, Hassan. Yes, there are white Puerto Ricans and there are Black Puerto Ricans. Like, we shouldn't have to say this. I don't know. I give up. I give up for tonight. I thought we could have, I approach these conversations. I'm going to do one last comment that somebody made, maybe two more. But honestly, you know what I was really trying to do? As I was reading through the comment section, I was just like, let me try to take these comments seriously. But honestly, I don't know if some of you want to be taken seriously. I don't know if you're just commenting just to be contrary or if you're really trying to engage in dialogue. I try to treat everybody's comment like you're being serious, unless you're obviously just being ridiculous. But sometimes, I don't know what to make of it. I really don't. CTX said, "This is as crazy as the Kevin Samuels shit. Find a flaw and blow it up," and says, "Walk away from the black man or woman. I wonder who's paying the pink pill and the red pill people. It's like opposite sides have the same goal. Wild and stupid." I just don't know how you listened to my live and got that. We literally ended the live talking about healing the divide between different classes of Black men. Black women doing their part to enable certain types of behavior and support certain types of Black men, and withdrawing support from other types of Black men so as to not incentivize destruction in our community. And then you come to my comment section and make a stupid question like that. It's just like, can you guys not do more than read the title? Please do more than read the title of the videos. Actually listen to what's being said and try to step out of your emotions. Do more than read the title of the video. This is really important. David said, "Women by nature will always choose security over freedom." So her point about women willing to get more physical for liberation is bull. Secondly, the same men who are bucking the system are not only Black women's biggest threat, but they go back into the system once they get arrested. So women do often choose security, but women are also more aggressive. I mean, anybody who's been on my channel long enough, I literally just read, a 250-year-old speech given by a Black escaped female slave where she's begging the men to join her in liberating the other slaves. You know what I think it is, honestly, David? What I think it is, David Jones, I think it's that men are more cautious about engaging in violence with other men because you know what the result of violence with other men is. And I don't think this just has to do with white people. I think if two men are in a space, you guys could literally, if you had a disagreement, one of you could just punch the other in the face. But the reality is neither of you really wants to get hurt. So most confrontations that men have with each other don't end in violence. I think for a group of people who haven't done what it takes to create an army or a defense system of any kind, it is heavily intimidating to conceive the idea of engaging in any level of real self-protection on a community level. Women recognize that our safety is tied ultimately at its core to a man's willingness to at some point snatch another man. Okay? You need to be able to yoke somebody up. You have to, at some point, you have to be willing to say, okay, and now I'm going to punch you in the face. And now I'm going to bash your face in, right? At some point, women recognize our safety is tied to men eventually being comfortable with having to do that if it comes down to it. Not just on an interpersonal level, but on a communal level. So when it is said that women are more assertive about violence than men are, probably because we don't have to go fisticuff with other men, but also because we recognize that our protection and our safety, right, and that of our children is created by the willingness for the men to go to war, like an actual physical battle fight. Like I said, why don't we just send our troops over to China? Because China will fight us. Why is Kim Jong over there playing with nuclear weapons, and we haven't just sent some troops over there to get into a battle with him? Because he might shoot us with one of those weapons. You know what I mean? Like when people know that you're willing to be violent, then that's why we got peace treaties. I don't want beef with you, you don't want beef with me. I'll shoot you, you'll shoot me, therefore we're going to have a peace treaty. Honestly, there is in the live earlier, I was talking about the Dred Scott decision. Let me see if I can share this with you guys. In the live earlier, I was talking about the Dred Scott decision. And you know what was crazy about the Dred Scott decision, you guys, is they actually made a comparison to why Black men were not considered citizens and Black women were not considered citizens. They compared it to why they respect the Native American, if you can believe it. I'm going to pull it up right now, in fact. And I'm going to show it to you. Because this kind of ties into what this person was saying. And actually, on my, for my members and my patrons, I'm actually going to go through this whole, I'm actually going to go through this whole thing and talk about a bunch of things. There's a lot of things came up in the Dred Scott decision as the judge was talking about. As the judge was talking about his decision. But I just want to share this with you because I need you guys to understand what is respected. Specifically to this person that made this comment. I think that this is really necessary. Let me just pull it up. Hold on. All right. So I'm about to share my screen. I'm going to share the actual written transcript of the court case, right? So remember, the Dred Scott case was where it was decided that Black people were not citizens capable of expecting respect from their slave owners, right? They couldn't push back. It was it was Dred Scott and John Sanford, right? So I'm going to get to the part where it talks about why this Black man wasn't able to really have any rights. And it goes to his inability to have a standing army. Honestly, he doesn't have a standing army. And Black people didn't have a standing army, and so they weren't to be respected. This is actually in the case. So I'm going to pull it up because I want to. Okay, so here we go. Let me share my screen with you guys. I want you guys to see this. I want you to know that all right. So here we go. So it goes on to say, the situation of this population, talking about Black people, is unlike that of the Indian race, okay? Why is the situation of Black people not like the Indian race? They formed no part of the colonial communities. They never amalgamated with them in social connections or in government. Are you listening to this? The Indians did not join the white people's community. They did not amalgamate with them in a social political hierarchy. And even though they were uncivilized, according to this white judge, they were yet a free and independent people, associated together in nations or tribes. Listen to this. This is an American court case. This is what the judge wrote in his ruling. And governed by their own laws. Listen to what he said. This is why he said this Black man had no rights. He said, your situation is not like the Indian situation. The Indians didn't join our communities. They're not a part of our community. They did not engage in our social order. They did not engage in white government. We didn't think they were civilized, but they were free, they were independent, they had nations or tribes, and they were governed by their own laws. It goes on to say that a lot of these places where they had their communities and their tribes were in places that white people felt that they had ultimate right of dominion. So they were even on land that the white people said that they wanted. But that claim was acknowledged to be subject to the right of the Indians to occupy as long as they thought proper. And neither the English nor the colonial governments claimed or exercised any dominion over the tribe or nation by whom it was occupied, nor claimed the right and possession of the territory. But listen to this. These Indian governments, because these people had government, they had their own rules, their own laws, were regarded and treated as foreign governments. And even as bad as the state of the Indian in America is today, they're still treated like a foreign government on American soil. They are subject to their own laws on their own land, right? They were regarded and treated as foreign governments as so much as if an ocean had separated the red man from the white. And their freedom has constantly been acknowledged. From the time of the first immigration to the English colonies to the present day, by the different governments which succeeded each other. Listen to this. Treaties have been negotiated with them. You can't have a treaty without a government. And their alliance sought for war. Let me repeat that. And their alliance sought for war. Let's go back to his comment. Women by nature will always choose security over freedom. So her point about women being willing to get more physical for liberation is bull. My argument is what women recognize and what our frustration is that you must have the ability to fight, to be respected and saw as free. When you have no ability to fight, when you are unwilling to fight, you are no longer free. And this is what this judge in the United States for the Dred Scott case, this is what he said. He said, when it came to Black people, He went on to say that the Indian were a sovereign people and had sovereignty. The question before us is whether the class of persons described in the plea of abatement, in other words, the Black man who was suing, compose a portion of this people and are constitute members of this sovereignty. We think they are not. Why? He said, on the contrary, they were at the time considered as a subordinate and inferior class of beings. This is a United States court case, who had been subjugated by the dominant race, and whether emancipated, meaning whether they were free or not, yet remained subject to their authority and had no rights or privileges, but such as those who held the power and the government might choose to give them. And my question for you today is, what freedom, what right do you have that the government and the people who hold the power do not choose to give you? Because you are not sovereign. You are not sovereign. Nobody's coming to you for your aid in a war. Nobody's trying to make a treaty with you. And women recognize that sovereignty is protection. Sovereignty is protection. That's why people protect their nation's borders. That's why they get standing armies. That's why they try to control water resources. That's why they try to have mining. That's why they engage in international commerce. They do it for sovereignty's sake, because sovereignty is power, and we have no sovereignty. Many African nations have no sovereignty. They may have a Black person running their country, but their finances are subject to Europe. And so we can talk about the so-called disrespect of these conversations all we want. And Black men can get in their feelings and Black women can get in their feelings. But I just think we should keep it 1,000, because until we recognize what actual position we are in as a people and why it is we are subjugated to this day, because that's what he said. We have been subjugated by the dominant race, and whether emancipated or not, whether free or not, we yet remain subject to their authority and have no rights or privileges, such as those who held the power and the government might choose to grant them. This is an American court case. And I go to say that what this judge wrote is still very relevant today. And maybe that doesn't make us feel good, right? Maybe that doesn't make us feel good. Maybe that's not what we want to hear. We want to sit here and we want to talk about, submission, and we want to talk about who's got a good job, and, who picked the pookie or who picked the educated lame, and, who's doing what to who. Maybe we want to talk about all this other stuff, but all of that is so petty, because the problem is bigger than who likes you and who wants to have sex with you and who wants to go on a date with you. And I really don't like the conversations that I have on my page being diminished in the comment section to sexual access. We are not in slavery anymore. What woman is going to have sex with you and what kids you will or won't reproduce is not the complete and end all be all to our existence. We's free now. Can we start talking about some free man stuff? Can we start talking about building infrastructure, controlling resources? Can we become sovereign at some point? And can we not diminish questions of sovereignty down to whether or not you had friends who were an engineer that women wouldn't date? Because our problem is so much bigger than that. And I'm only on one person's side. And that's our community side. But if the only conversations, if it's going to be called black man bashing, black man hating to have an honest conversation, I just don't know. I don't know what to say, you guys. I just don't know what to say. If that's what it's going to be minimized to, then I just don't know what to say. J Norm 888 said it might be bigger than that, but it starts with who you choose to marry. Oh, goodness sakes, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. It doesn't. It doesn't. It truly doesn't. It just truly doesn't, honestly. It really doesn't. It starts with your mindset. Because who you choose to marry is only as relevant as your mindset. You could choose to marry the blackest person in the room and have the most destructive, unproductive mindset, and your blackety black kids won't save you. You could worship whiteness to the point that when you pick a white spouse, you would be useless to anybody. You see, it could go either way. You can be useless no matter who you choose to marry. It is not about sexual access or who you have sex with. It is so much bigger than that. Slave owners were raping black women left and right. All of South America is filled with a bunch of people who are spicy white because of a bunch of intermingling. But the mindset of one group of people that was intermingling was different from the mindset of another group of people that was intermingling. And that's why that population looks white and not native. I mean, Candace Owens, I would be surprised if she even had a smattering of white in her. And she did a whole lot of damage before she picked a husband. There's some African leaders right now who have fully African wives, and they are traitorous to their own countries. So it doesn't start with who you choose to marry. It starts with your mindset. It starts with understanding things are bigger than having sex with somebody. It's bigger than that. The picture is bigger. It's not about sex. It is not about sex. We think it's about sex and things like that because we're from slave times where literally us having sex was the end all be all to our existence because creating profit for our masters was what's promoted. But we have to move past penises and vaginas, okay? We have to move past what penis and vagina did you choose? Because there's other conversations that need to go on before anybody needs to worry about that. A fool having sex, one black fool having sex with another black fool are just going to produce foolish children. They're going to be black, but they're going to be stupid. And I dare say we have enough black people running around here without a brain in their head to tell them that all you need to do is jump into bed with another black person and that's the beginning of everything. Clearly, it's not the beginning of everything because most of us date and marry black and we still aren't free in the way that we could be. Most of us cannot even conceive of half the things that we discussed in this live. And it's not, I'm not directing this at you personally. I'm just saying I hate when people say that. I did a whole story on a black man who had a black wife and he killed his wife and his 2 black kids. So it doesn't really matter who he married because his mind wasn't right. You have black women out here who hop from one black penis to another, but their minds are not right. I dare say there's some half-breeds, quadroons, octoroons out here who love Black people more than actual Black people love Black people. Listen, this is just some food for thought, honestly, you guys. It's just some food for thought. Just something for you to think about. I do want to correct, in the last live, I was caught up in my thoughts and I was also worried about my bread. And I said the Dred Scott decision, and I never said that the master's name was Sanford, and that was my mistake. I said Dred Scott as two people versus Dred Scott versus Sanford. And so I apologize about that. I'll probably make a note on that video. But anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I just wanted to just revisit it and just talk about a couple. There's more comments I could talk about that were made on that video. But you know, it just made me sad. Sometimes when we don't like what we're hearing, we tune out the message. And everybody should know, when you come to my channel, I'm not here to bash Black men, and I'm not here to bash Black women. But we do have to keep it real. And the minute somebody says something that hits close to home, to your side of the fence, I don't need to be accused of pushing any kind of negative content. We could just be honest with each other. If we can't do that, we're not going to get anywhere. We have to tiptoe around everybody's feelings. We don't hurt anybody's feelings. We can't say anything because then it's like hating. It was important for me to bring Sin over here because Sin had a very powerful message that gets lost in the fact that everybody's too much in their feelings to actually ever listen to her. Which is why I wanted to bring her over and ask her pointed questions. Pointed questions. Because I knew if we talked through it, the sense of it would be clear to both men and women who are listening. We just remove ourselves from the emotion for a minute and look at the conversation. You know, everybody doesn't have to be your favorite person for them to have a good point. You don't have to like somebody 1,000% for them to have a good point. They don't have to say it in the nicest, most cuddly way for them to have a good point. And I honestly feel like people got in my comment section triggered, but they didn't really listen to the live. They didn't really listen to the conversation. There was so much useful dialogue that went on in that conversation for everybody. But sometimes we're so remediated in our thinking and so hyper emotional and so caught up in YouTube beef that when a conversation is had that's really for our collective benefit, it goes just under the radar because nobody knows how to be serious. You have to be serious. You have to take this seriously. We have to progress our conversations past dating and sex and Pookie and Ray Ray and educated. Like, this is stupid. It's remediated. It's stupid. And it's not going to help us. Ed said, well, still, Pels, I don't care what you're talking about. Listen to the live that I just gave. And if you have a problem with something that I have said, then why don't you speak on that? Do you know what I mean? Like I said, it's okay to disagree, but can we disagree in a way that provokes actual conversation? Just disagree with intellect. Disagree with an actual point that was being made. Like, I disagree with this point that was made. I choose to contradict this point with these other points. Do you know what I mean? Like, can we talk like adults over here? Please, can we just have can we be actual adults? That's all I'm asking. You don't have to agree on my channel, but when you disagree, can you specify what you're disagreeing with? Can you speak to why you're disagreeing with it? And not some childish stuff like, I don't like, I don't like that person. I'm not a fool. I'm not like an actual point. Make a point so that we can have a conversation. Make a point so we can be adults and have a conversation. This is not we're not piranhas in a pit. I don't like feeding frenzies over on my channel. I want thinking people, not reactive people just saying stupid stuff to be blurting something out and being controversial. Use your mind. Bring your intellect to the table. Feel free to disagree, but disagree with an actual thing, not people, but actual things that are said, and then we can dialogue on that. Let's pretend that we're all of an adult age here. Look. Flex all, I think that's a good question. I think we could do a whole live on that, on what does sovereignty even mean in this global economy and power structure. I think we could do a whole live on that, because I think sometimes we think the global power structure is all encompassing, and it's not. And I would like to point out some specific countries and nations that aren't a part of the global system, because they do exist. And slowly but surely, they're being attacked and picked apart and brutalized by the outside systems. But we have to see that these systems do stand and know that it is possible, because these systems do exist. Everybody is not part of this machine. They don't own the whole world yet. They really don't. So anyway, with that said, I'm going to get out of here. And I'll talk to you guys later.